I'm going to redo this video. I'm going to call it the dumbing down of society. I had put up a video called the deliberate dumbing down of America. I haven't checked. It may still be up on my old channel. But I reposted it on this channel, and it was one of the first ones that YouTube censored. And this was also when they first took away my ability to have over 15-minute videos. Now, I think the last time I checked it was banned worldwide. No explanation given. So I'm going to try redoing it because it's an important issue. There has been a deliberate dumbing down campaign, and I put video clips. I think that's the excuse they're using, but they were clips that were clearly just documentary clips, within fair use parameters. But this, I'll put one up. This one's not going to have any clips, but I had clips of Beavis and Butthead to try to prove my point. I had a clip on there of this guy. I think he was an Australian reporter, downtown New York or someplace, asking people about 9/11. What day was 9/11? They couldn't. What month was it? What year was it? They had no clue. I suppose some people figured, well, there's this damn Australian reporter making fun of us Americans. Well, when you say stuff like that, man, I mean, the guy had some pretty good points. And then they had this, I had a clip from this one, there's this really stupid woman, are you smarter than a third grader, I think it was, and they're trying to ask her what country is Budapest in, and she says, well, I was going to say France, but France is not a country. I mean, she's just, the point I want to get, the main thing I want to get to, there has been a deliberate dumbing down campaign, and especially the low classes must always remain poor and ignorant, and this is deliberate. Now, you'll note that elementary school is not only free, it's mandatory up through 12th grade. It didn't used to be that way. Education, you usually had to pay for it, but in that higher level education, you really had to pay for it. Now it's free. That's because education has become a propaganda tool, and they have cut the learning curve way down through the elementary school and even the high school. They've cut the pace about in half. 6th grade used to be the equivalent of 12th grade, and I had examples. I'm not even going to put them on there. They'll probably say that's copyright infringement too. Who knows? They had, find a textbook from the 1920s or the 1800s. You will find that the questions and the level of questions and things that they asked in 6th grade were about the equivalent of 12th grade. All 4 of my grandparents who went to school like in the 10s, 20s, 1910s and 20s, none of them got past 6th grade, but they were all well educated. They could read and write. They knew about history and all the basic knowledge you'd expect from somebody who was a high school graduate. They had a fair understanding of all these things. The way they talked, the way they communicated was about the equivalent of somebody who had graduated from high school. Now, before 1920, most people didn't go past like 6th grade. Anything beyond 6th grade was kind of considered to be upper division. It was basically kind of considered college. In fact, most didn't go beyond 6th to 8th grade. You had to go to college to go beyond 6th grade education. Now, so what they've done is they've taken the pace and of the education system, basically cut it in half, and at the same, they put in a lot of busy work and to keep the kids busy for like 8 hours a day. Now they're even going in the summer, but they've added a lot of propaganda thing. Back before the 1920s, there were a lot of so-called dissidents. There were a lot of people that didn't trust the government, a lot of people that didn't, especially in the South, but not just in the South, a lot of places. Nowadays, it's like, you can't question the government, you can't question your doctor, you can't question, the healthcare profession, you can't question the media. Everything that's on TV, everything the reporters tell you on TV is absolutely true. And it's your patriotic duty to join the military and fight for America, for freedom and democracy, which is just complete propaganda. What you're doing when you join the military, you're serving the military-industrial complex. And we have wars that are created for the simple purpose of making money, but also it's blood sacrifice. Now, this is hard for a lot of people to believe and accept, but if you really start doing some serious research, you'll see. I get into this in other videos, so I'm not going to cover it here. But it's a simple fact. The whole war is a racket. Look up that. There's a famous, I think it was ex-general who made that speech, war is a racket. Read that. I mean, it's one of the most truthful things about the military ever said. And this military propaganda continues, and it's often promoted in the movies. The movies aren't, the masses think the movies are and TV shows are just for entertainment. No, it's also about programming. It's like high school and elementary school nowadays. It's not just about education, it's about programming. So half of your time in high school and elementary school is education, and half the time is programming. And you learn all kinds of things like about how the white people enslaved the black people, which is really a bunch of... It's only part true. There's certain white people that enslaved the black. And there were a lot of white people that were slaves. A lot of things that a lot of people don't realize. Especially if you read books like Mark Twain and stuff, you start to realize what really went on. The first slaves were white people. They were indentured servants. And as time went on, the plantation owners, who actually mostly belonged to a certain group of people I'm forbidden to mention. The plantation owners were in the habit of raping or having sex with their slaves. And, some of that may have been willing, a lot of it probably was not willing. And they were often even raping their daughters and granddaughters. It was a typical thing. As time was going on, the slaves were becoming less and less black and more white. In fact, there were some slaves you couldn't even tell were black. But they were still slaves, and they weren't treated any better than the dark-skinned ones. Maybe in some cases they were, but often they weren't. Slave's a slave. In the whole country, that's one of the reasons why they were trying to stop slavery, because the whole country was going to become a complete slave state, which it kind of is, in a way, since they couldn't do it directly. Now they're trying to do it indirectly and making you believe you're not a slave when you are. And there was a plan, actually, to enslave basically white and black. It's the lower class of the slaves, basically. The middle class are the educated slaves, and the upper class, they're the privileged. They're better. They're better than you and I. They're better people. Their shit doesn't stink, and basically, Pardon my rather vulgar terminology, but shit is shit. They're not going to grow old and die like we are, They're supermen and superwomen, all of them. They're not human like we are. They're divine. They're holier than thou. But we're just common shit. But anyway, that gets into the other point I was going to make and I made in my last video on the dumbing down of society, is you have to, education's free for the lower class, okay? But to get into the middle class, you have to have that magic little diploma, and that costs a lot of money nowadays. College education is extremely, well, it's always been high. It's geared to keep, the poor have to be kept poor. This is the slave society. Anything that these monsters have decreed has to be, okay? There has to be 3 classes. It has to be. It's in their books, I guess. You have to have 3. You can't deviate from that. And the lower class has to be pissed on, it has to be shit on, and they have to be kept poor, and they have to be kept stupid. So there's things they want them to know, so that they do have an educational system for them, but like I said, it's more programming than anything else. So there's things and they have to be able to, they want to be able to read and write a little bit so they can text in a computer. The computers has long been planned to be part of the propaganda thing, although it's backfired because of people like me putting out videos like this. But they're trying to get rid of people like me, and they're not going to stop trying, because these people, one thing about them is they can't change. They have to, they have plans that last for centuries. They will continue to try to whittle away at people like me until we're gone, unless we keep fighting back. which I hope will happen. But anyway, that's the primary reason why you have to pay through the nose for upper level education, because that's your ticket into the middle class. And to get out of the lower class and in the middle class, you have to have that diploma, and you have to fork out a lot of money to get that diploma. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. It's all a big scam, it's all a big con game, and it's all a bunch of bullshit. I'm just going to go on a little bit more about something that really kind of bothers me is the ripping on white people in general. And this is a very important part of the propaganda that is taught in high school and even in elementary school and in college. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a white person. I don't like any injustice, whoever it's directed to. There's injustices that are directed towards women that bother me. There's injustices directed towards Indians and blacks and Hispanics and others that bother me. I don't like injustice. I don't like lies. I don't like propaganda. And I especially don't like psychopaths committing evil, sadistic crimes on all of society and then going to great lengths to make sure other people get blamed for what they're doing. That pisses me off beyond belief. Man, do I wish that people would rise up and start giving these monsters a taste of their own medicine. Once in a while they get it, but very, very rarely. The propaganda systems they have in place are very effective, and they've got everybody thinking they're innocent, and in often cases they got everybody thinking they're the victims. And unfortunately, the techniques work very well. 90% of society is completely fallen for it. And that's another thing they teach in high school, is that kind of propaganda. You learn about how white people have, throughout all of history, have done nothing but victimize all the other races and cultures. That's one of the very important things that they have to teach. That's because the people who really have been doing the victimizing, they need scapegoats. They need to blame it. They got to blame it on the Nazis. They got to blame it on the Muslims. They got to blame it on white people. White people did all these things. Yeah. Some of it was white people, not all of it was white people, but a certain group of so-called white people that did most of these things that you can't talk about. Most white people have been just as victimized as everybody else. Maybe not quite as much as some groups. The blacks have probably been beaten down a little more than whites in general, but whites in general have been victims too. If you look at, do some real research of the way the average white European peasant lived for the past 1,000 years. The average white peasant was pretty miserable. They were slaves, they were tortured, they were starved en masse. I mean, they died of plagues that were deliberately inflicted on them. They were slaves and they were treated horribly.